Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks where kindred souls gather together to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as the February Room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for composite development fly rods and accessories. 40 years of Kiwi ingenuity and graphite technology now available at cd-fishing.us or your local CD USA dealer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And remember to go fishing. Here's your host, the Karnoffs, and this is the February Room.
Last summer, a friend and I had grabbed our bikes and made our way up the mountain to fly fish. With a fly rod over my shoulder, gear and lunch on the other side, the 5-mile bike was a juggling act. What made this ride feel more like a circus is when a storm rolled in and cut our time on the water short. As I made my descent down the mountain, I looked down and realized my bike had a flat. A total blowout flat. So I had to carry my bike and my gear on my shoulder back to the truck. Today, my guest is going to share some new gear that could have made my day somewhat more enjoyable. Welcome to the podcast, John Smigaj, CEO, co-founder of Trestle in Helena, Montana. Thank you so much for joining me today, John.
Thanks for having me, Lauren. I'm excited.
And I wish I had known all about what you guys do over at Trestle before my big adventure. It was really quite miserable. Like when I looked down, it wasn't like, we kept on trying to blow it up and it did not work. And so it was a lot of gear, a lot of pleasant words were coming down the mountain. But before we go into more about what Trestle and your company, I would love to hear a fly fishing story.
Sure, yeah. So first of all, sorry to hear about your adventure, but I wish I could have been across the river to hear all those expletives as you were coming down.
Oh my gosh, it was awful.
Let's see. Good fly fishing story. Trying to think of one that I don't share often. I tend to always use the same general ones. Let's talk about. I have a pretty cool king salmon story, I guess. It's pretty wild. So years ago, I was fishing in Kodiak, Alaska, and we have a yearly kind of family trip that we go on with my dad, my uncle, my cousin, and we've been doing it about 16 years now. So we go and we swing flies for king salmon. Essentially, we just swing flies through the water, and every once in a while, somebody catches a fish. But basically, long story short, I had a really tough season a few years back. I was the only one that hadn't hooked in. It was like 4 or 5 days into the trip, I should say, and very few salmon in the system at the time. And so I was swinging through this really long kind of tail out, and really methodically, I was kind of envisioning like Pacific Northwest steelhead tactics, where I was moving 6 inches after every 5 casts and just really methodically going through the hole. And then anyway, I finally hooked into one, and I was all excited. I'm yelling for my cousin to come down, help me tail it. And after a really long battle, it's starting to come in, and I was super nervous because I thought maybe I foul hooked it or something, because it was acting real weird. It was fighting really strange. And I'm like, God, I don't know what's going on. So we start getting it in, and I'm like, where's it hooked? And he's out in the water trying to grab it. And he goes, I don't see a hook anywhere. And we're looking at it. And so when we do finally, he grabs it, he tails it, and I start walking over to it. We can't understand how it's hooked. And we find out that I had lassoed it. So the line was all the way around it, and then the hook hooked the fishing line, not the fish, and it was just holding on to it by around its adipose, I guess, kind of between there and the tail.
Oh my gosh. And what are the chances that, it kind of just, I don't know why it sounded like, when you have you're bowling and there's like 2 pins on one side and one's on the other, and you're like, there's no way I'm never going to get that. Yeah. And then you kind of hit the pin and then it goes across. Yeah. I mean, what are the chances that that could possibly happen? I mean, the current must have looped it around, or?
Well, as far as your analogy, I don't know what that would be like, Lauren, because I don't understand how. I just went to the Trout Unlimited bowling here in Helena last weekend, and I was the worst bowler by far of everyone there. So I
just got.
I cannot relate, but
as TLC says, you just got to stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, I think that must have been what it was. I really don't know. I really don't. I like to think he went for it and somehow that happened, but maybe it just went over top of him, and that, I don't know. It was very wild though, but it's been something that I joke with my family all the time about, and I always ask them if they've ever lassoed a salmon before and landed it.
Well, I think that should be a bumper sticker, right?
Yeah, it should be.
There's always some stickers of some fish on a cowboy, and this one you can just have lassoed on the fish.
There you go.
Well, John, I am so interested in Trestle, and it's spelled Trxstle, but pronounced Trestle, correct?
Yeah, we just wanted to make it hard on everyone.
Well, I mean, in the beginning, I think I've called you guys for like the past 3 months Trxstle, and then I was like, oh, I am saying it completely wrong. But I'm so interested because I think as anglers, we're gear junkies, and it's also a lot of managing this gear, especially when you're going to go on the water. And would love to hear about, how did Trestle come to fruition?
Sure, yeah. So the X in our name is sort of a throwback to that classic Trestle aesthetic, the crossed beams. That's sort of why we did that. And also we did it because it was unique and fun, and we thought it would be kind of cool to kind of have that company name that nobody really knew how to say, kind of like Ruka, but everyone, calls it RVCA, sort of like that. But it came because my business partner, Morgan, the two of us were working together for a few different engineering jobs. We're both mechanical engineers by trade and designing products. And one of those jobs was at a locomotive firm, which is sort of where that Trestle name comes from as well, Trestle Bridges. And so we were designing locomotives for Cummins Diesel as well as the Machu Picchu tourist trail line. One day, it was a Tuesday, we came into work and the building was quite literally chained shut, and the president of that company had taken everyone's payroll money and fled the country.
What a great boss.
Yeah, so that inspired me to A, hopefully be a better boss one day, and B, we had no choice but to find other employment. So Morgan and I both pursued a few other engineering jobs that we saw in the area. This was in Olympia, Washington, and I went to school there and got married there, so I was living there. And anyway, we decided to start our own company, and so we started a company called Oak Avenue Engineering. It's an engineering firm, product design firm that still exists, and we were doing product design for mountain biking and some fly fishing brands, as well as primarily in the medical device space. And Morgan really liked it, and I liked working with Morgan, but unless we were doing an outdoor product, I really wasn't very engaged. I don't think. I didn't really like just engineering, really cool products that do a lot of good. So that's really, obviously it's a feel-good thing to be doing, but I just kind of started dreading it pretty quick, and that's not why I started a company. I didn't want to come to work dreading Monday, and so we decided to start our own company, and tossed around a lot of names. Trestle's the one that stuck, and we decided we wanted to be known for sort of a crossover fly fishing and mountain biking company that designed products to carry gear in those spaces and hopefully combine both of those pursuits. And here we are.
I mean, like I said in the beginning of my storytelling, I wish I had known about a better way of carrying my gear. Have you noticed, like, when you were going out, like in the outdoor space, you're like, why hasn't someone done something like this? Like, is that how it came to you? Just one day of just always going out fly fishing, mountain biking, and just realize that there wasn't enough gear that actually helped you out with carrying it to your destination?
Yeah, that is basically where it came from. I mean, I think maybe to take it a little deeper, being from, Helena and just growing up fly fishing, that's just always been the thing I was the most passionate about. And Morgan, my partner, was the exact same way, but with mountain biking. So he's truly the mountain bike guy, and I would be the fly fishing person. And obviously we wanted to find a way to combine them. But yeah, we started noticing that every time we went out and went fishing or mountain biking, we always saw rivers or, downhill, right? Like what we were doing the other one. So we always wanted to bring both. And yeah, when we launched with our fly rod carrier for your roof, that was our first carry product. And we just saw a lot of improvements that could be made that we wanted to tackle. And then we had started working on our new product this year, which you were just talking about, called the Geryon. And so really we were supposed to launch with both those at the same time, but the development of the Geryon took us the last 3.5 years to get right. So
what did you have to get right with that?
Some of that has to do with patents, and some of it has to do with just completely redesigning it from our original concept. The mounting was totally different. It was like motorized ratchet straps that created mounting points on a bicycle frame within the triangle, and then you can mount to that. And we ran that for probably 1.5 years and tested it and did failure testing, and just kind of out of the blue came up with a way superior, well, I wouldn't say out of the blue, but we came up with a superior system over years. I don't think that's called out of the blue.
Right. Lots of testing.
Yeah, lots of testing, and just came up with the one you see today.
What do you find is the since you've come up with all of these inventions, are you constantly in the wheelhouse, as you're riding the bike and you've got this, you've got the Trxstle, you got your rig on your car, you got your mountain bike. Are you starting to realize that there's other spaces that you need to keep filling?
Yeah, I think, we really want to keep focused with mountain biking and fly fishing. I mean, our whole mission is carry products, right? We don't want to make the actual, gear in regards to a bike or a reel or a rod, but we want to make things that carry that stuff. So, yeah, we are constantly, just because of our backgrounds, I think, designing and improving and adding. And, something we really are proud of is we don't ever make something that we didn't fully design from scratch. We don't purchase product and put our name on it. We always are the engineers behind it.
Oh, I love that. Now, are you more of do you like to mountain bike and fly fish? Is that kind of your go-to?
I did a lot in Washington State for steelhead, a lot. That's how I got to most of the water, and that's sort of why I was like, we need something to carry these rod tubes so that I'm not pinching my brake lines and crashing with my bungee cord. So that's definitely part of it, yeah. But I don't do it as much now. To be honest with you, I haven't fished very much this last probably year and a half. I've just been really busy, and my wife and I moved back to Helena finally, so there's been a lot of transition. And then, of course, the company, we split, so our corporate office is in Washington still with my business partner, and operations are now run. So we do manufacturing and quality control and fulfillment here in Helena. So there's just been a lot of moving parts.
What made you decide to move back to Helena?
Well, I've been trying to since I left. So I think actually COVID kind of helped us move that timeline ahead, just because my wife's job went fully remote, and that was sort of what was holding us there. And so that allowed us to, hey, this could be a good time just to go ahead and, I guess, rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak, and finally get home. So I couldn't be happier. I missed home a lot.
Well, and I can relate to that feeling. I remember when Justin and I got relocated from Missoula to Peoria, Illinois for some work that, as soon as we left in the beginning, I was like, yeah, this state is awful. February is horrible. We should just try some different state. And the moment we moved to Peoria, Illinois, we were working so hard to move back. And I promised myself, I was like, I promise if I get to move back to Montana, I will not complain about the weather. And that lasted for probably about 2 years. I really didn't complain about the weather, and hence now I have a podcast called The February Room based on the weather in Montana.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then the February Room happened.
And then the February Room, where I'm able to just talk about the weather in Montana. But I love your story. And, I think Helena is such a cool place place to grow up, and also just the waters that are around there. Can you give a little bit of description about your home waters up there that you enjoy?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a lot of smaller streams that I go to, but obviously the Missouri, the Mo flows essentially through town, and we've got Craig and Wolf Creek just up the road. But I definitely kind of learned on the Missouri, with my family, and I do travel over to the Blackfoot sometimes and fish, but there's a lot of really good water just near town. Whether it's going up to the Missouri, or even I've been doing a lot of ice fishing this year, which has been kind of fun. Kind of not a fly fishing thing necessarily, but I do use flies.
Yes.
When I'm fly fishing.
Oh, you
when
do?
I'm ice fishing.
Oh, that's
So
exciting.
I do, yeah.
Have you had much success this winter?
I did last winter. This winter has been not my year. Let's put it that way.
Yes, yeah. Now, can you ride a mountain bike into the middle of the lake and then drill your hole with all your gear on there?
Yeah, I don't have I saw a lot of e-bikes, like fat tire e-bikes, and they were out there they were up at Canyon Ferry. There was quite a few of them out there. I don't have one, so I was making my dog pull my sled, but yeah, you could.
There are some serious mountain bikes up there, with the big, like you said, the big fat tires. And when I saw all the new equipment that you guys were coming up with, I was like, you could seriously do some major camping. Can you give a little bit more of aspects of exactly the gear that you can mount onto your bike, and then how much can it hold? Can I go I do a lot of girls mountain bike trip, or not, we go backpacking, we go fly fishing, but I thought this would be so great. We could put all of our backpacks on there, our tents, and trek up the mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it's for. So it is a universal system. So it mounts to an e-bike, a road bike, a full suspension bike, which is really unique because currently if you want to put, for instance, a triangle bag on, whatever, maybe your gravel bike or whatever kind of hybrid you might have, or your mountain bike, you're really limited to that specific frame, right? Because it's shaped in that way. And if you have a full suspension bike, you really can't use that bag anymore. So now you'd have to come up with mounting points either on your front forks or, on the rear tire. So, and when you do that, using those traditional methods, you really mess with the suspension and kind of the design of the bike, right? So, if you think about, I'm going to put a whole bunch on my forward, mount on my forks, I'm going to put a bunch of camping gear, like you said, like your pack and sleeping bags and a fly rod. You're really completely preloading those forks. You're taking up a lot of the travel. So your bike's just not going to perform quite the way it was intended, especially with your, descending. So one of the really nice things about the Geryon is it mounts to universal mounting points. And when you load up each end, the fender that it creates over the rear tire, and then similarly the same fender it creates over the front tire, you're actually loading it through the triangle of the bike, right? So your suspension's being loaded in the way it's intended. But as far as weight goes, yeah, you can put 20 pounds on the front, 20 pounds on the back, no problem. You can go more, but we failure rated it to that. I think when you start, some of the e-bike guys would like to carry more, I'm sure, but if you're pedaling, you don't really want to be putting much more than that on there anyway.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to be doing that anyways. Also it's more gear you're having to set up and then put away. It's almost like cleaning up a house. You're you bring it in the house, you got to clean it up. And also you have the cool, the CRC system with the rack on top of your car. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because you do see, in Missoula, gosh, you can see in the morning, you'll see a bunch of guides with fly rod holders up there. And in the beginning, my husband's like, I don't know if I really would ever want anything like that. And I'm like, well, you know what? If you're just want to get up and just go and you not have to mess with your fly rod and put it together, I think it's very handy.
Yeah, so there's definitely, Justin is sort of the reason, it was sort of the target when we launched that product. That was very similar. So our product telescopes, so it starts at a carry case mode. It has a shoulder strap. So the product actually comes at about 45 inches. It's fully collapsed. That's how it comes out of the box. And then it telescopes out to about 10.5 feet. So you actually get 4 mounting lengths. You can mount it all the way closed. I can't think of a reason you'd want to do that, but you could. If you had like a Mini Cooper and you just wanted to look cool, I guess, and let everyone know you fly fish, you could do that. But you certainly can mount it in half length, and 3/4 length is really popular because if you've got like a Subaru or any kind of car really, and you want to mount it, you don't always need a 10.5-foot thing on top of your car, and so you can mount it at 3/4 lengths, and in almost every configuration, you can just quickly, without even taking it off, pull that final section out while it's on your car. And now you're at 10 feet 4 inches. You can put your rigged, fly rod in there, and there's no tools. So part of the reason part of the goal with the product was to be quick on, quick off. So if you don't need it on there all the time, maybe you live in like a covered parking area, so it doesn't fit, or you don't want it on in the winter. Something like that, you just can quickly take it off. We've got a keyed system for the clamps. You just remove it. They actually store inside the housing if you wanted them to. They clip right into the lid. Collapse it all down. You could put it in a closet. You could carry it on a plane, whatever you want, and it's not this huge 50+ pound product.
Right, because that's the biggest thing. Because I have a Thule on my truck right now, or in my car right now, my Volkswagen, and I need to go to the car wash, and they're like, "Yeah, you need to take that off before you go in there." And I'm like,
"Yeah,
oh man, I think I'm gonna have like the kids have like a car wash, and we'll have some sponges because I do not want to dismount this thing. It's so heavy. You have to lock it, then have to rechain it, and then I'm also one of those anxious people. Like, did I do it right? Like, am I going to be driving and all of a sudden I'm going to hear someone crashing behind me? So to have the ability to have something that's easy to mount, take on, and also, you do see a lot of, especially when you start fly fishing a lot in the summertime, and guides probably in particular, a lot of the time they just end up leaving their rods in the car or in the truck. And I always wonder that the heat of the car, especially in the summertime, is not great for those fly rods to be sitting in the car. So I think having another, to have something that protects your gear, which is, you put a lot of investment in your fly rods, in your reels, in your lines. And it's easy to say that heat can have some huge problems if you just leave them in the car 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they just, you're kind of asking for damage if you've got a dog or kids or something like that, or a really excited client. You're going to have a potential to break a rod if it's running through the inside. So, that's actually funny you say that. We do get that question quite a bit about, I live in Arizona. Can I leave my rod inside the carrier? Those types of things. And one really nice thing about that product is, if you notice, if you look at it, there's a few really big differences between that and the ones on the market. The biggest one, and kind of part of our patent, was the fact that the reels are going upward, so they're facing up. So that's just so you're not riding on your guides when it's inside the carrier, because it's a pretty fragile part of the rod, and it's definitely an area where damage can occur. Fracturing can happen if it's faced the other direction. But another benefit, though, is that we have these liners that go down the center, and they're suspended in there on springs, and there's kind of a softer material, so they're not going to damage your fly rod. But there's basically a vent across the whole bottom of the aluminum, because you don't need a closed aluminum shell, because your rods are inside of our soft wall plastic inside the system. So anyway, what that does is allow for a lot of cooling to happen.
I'm just looking at it all right now. It totally makes sense that that's the way you'd want it to go, right? Like, you really would want it to be sitting.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
But what's funny about that is I was totally against that.
Really?
I was the one I was designing that product, and my partner Morgan was like, "Why don't we just put it upright? Because then you're not." I was trying to get around when you're putting a rod in, snagging up like while you're inserting it, And I was like, "How do I fix this?" And we realized if I point the reel up, that eliminates almost all of it. And so I was like, "Well, that's cool," but then I was trying to figure it out. He goes, "Why don't we just mount it with the reels facing upward?" And I think it's just because I grew up fly fishing. I'm like, that's not how they go. I hated it so much. I was like, no way. And he's like, okay, because he doesn't really fly fish. He's a mountain bike guy. So he's like, all right, man, whatever. And then it ended up being, kudos to Morgan, it's probably one of the most important parts of the whole product. So.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes somebody else's viewpoint, because I think as fly anglers, sometimes I'll have somebody come and give me some pointers. I'm like, no, like you're kind of ruining, like I've got it figured out and I'm not going to try something new by moving my thumb. Like my thumb is pointing down the rod. Like, oh, people are starting to move their thumb on the rod. And I was like, huh? No. I mean, why?
That's wrong.
That's wrong. And this person, and he was a guide, was like, no, you can move your thumb. And I was like, man, you cannot teach me a new trick. Like I'm feeling the vibe right now. I'm starting to now I'm feeling good about my double haul, and now you're going to tell me to move my thumb. It's not happening. So it is sometimes nice when you have somebody who's not like totally invested in fly fishing, because they can see it in a totally different way than the way that we're kind of stuck in our way of fly fishing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And it, like you just said, even when it comes to fishing itself, some of the best advice I've ever got from presenting a fly was from someone two people that they've never even fly fished, but they're huge, like swim bait bass anglers.
Oh, wow. What was like one of the best tips that you received from one of them?
I was in Washington. I was trying to target really big largemouth bass because there was this really cool lake that had huge fish in it, and the trout fishing's not really like it is in Montana. Not that you can't catch trout there, but Western Washington's a lot different. So anyway, I was just struggling with all the different techniques that I was used to when I presented streamers or any kind of, jig hook style fly, and I just really couldn't get them to take. And these guys were just showing me, hey, no, they're going to hit it on the down. They don't hit it like a smallmouth. Like they're going to hit it when it's falling. Do it this way. When you cast, try to make more noise. Totally contrary to what you do as a trout angler, and anyway, just like so much, not casting, right, but like presentation of it in the water, like how I stripped it, how I twitched it, all that stuff.
100%. It's gotta, like, if you have like a hopper, it's gotta make that plop noise.
Sure. Yeah, same idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Well, I mean, on top of all the cool like gear you also have apparel, which I see this rain. I'm like, I love your guys' rain jacket. That would have helped on my trip as well. I could have bought everything. I should have just done everything right there, right before I went on my mountain bike fly fishing chaos. That is so how did you come up with the apparel? Like, how did that then launch into like, hey, I'm seeing that now maybe we need to like dab over here into apparel?
Yeah, so we kind of launched originally. Apparel was like, just like most hard good brands. It's like we're going to put out a logo hat, maybe a T-shirt with our logo on it, just to try to get our name out there. But I'm really weird about. I'm not an apparel designer or a clothing designer by any means, but I ended up having a relationship with someone who works in manufacturing for like technical apparel for some really big brands, and so she knew how, like, so for instance, like none of our T-shirts are like a box shirt that we put our logo on. So when I say like none of our products are like that, like none of our products are. So I went to the factory, said, I hate it when sleeves fit like this. I don't like it when I lift my arms and my shirt fits like this. How do we so like we redid, like all of our T-shirts are done like that. And like, I don't want tags here. I want a little tag on my sleeve, like all those kinds of details. So I was like so into it that it just seemed kind of silly to just not actually try to push apparel. And then we ended up having this idea of, why don't we find like a starting kind of, I'm not going to say unknown, but a starting artist, someone who's not super well known, and partner with them, throw them concepts, and then see if we just do like an artist series every year. And that's where all of our designs will come from. And we'll put those designs on the apparel that, I design. And so we started doing that, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I guess. So every year we have a new artist that comes up with 5 to 10, different designs. And weirdly enough, our apparel is actually what got us in almost all of our largest, retail locations.
Wow.
Yeah, so I would have thought maybe I can beg them to stock my hat, but they'll take the fly rod carrier and the cases, right? No brainer. But actually, they reached out to us and said, hey, we want like a full run of all your tees and your technical apparel. We want your sun hoodie, like all this kind of stuff. And then over time, they brought in our hard goods.
I think they're like, let's just test the waters, right? Like we're not gonna jump right into the big gear. Let's just see how they can do in apparel, and if this stuff can hold up, then these engineers are on to something.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it's like we're really starting with the thing I know very little about in comparison.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is, just yesterday, Justin, we got some great swag, and I love also the stickers, the bumper stickers. And I think there is one that really spoke to me is the mom and dad fly fishing with the kid right below them, and I was like, I think that one's gonna go on my Thule that will never leave my Volkswagen. So
yeah, that's the Memory Lake. That was our new artist series for the year called our River Bum series. Yeah, so we tried to kind of loosely base it off different. And our whole thing is everybody pursues these outdoor, whether it's fly fishing or mountain biking, a little differently. And there's not really like the correct way to do it. I think the correct way to do it is being, conscious of the environment and where you're recreating, obviously. But beyond those, conscientious decisions that you'll make while you're out there, there's not really a right way. When we started this company, I really didn't like that I would see maybe guys going to go fly fish and they've got, like they're younger. They've got different clothes on that I wear because I'm old. And they've got, hip hop that I've never heard playing, and so it must mean they don't, know what they're doing and that they're not supposed to be doing this. And I just totally resent that. And I just like trying to welcome whether you're that or whether you're, you're a more stereotypical guy that golfs and fly fishes and likes his canvas gear. And you know what I mean? So like everybody's welcome out there. So,
absolutely. Yeah. I say this all the time. No fish in the water is going to think to themselves, who's the one behind the line? You know what I mean? Like,
it's well said.
It's anybody's game to go fishing. And I think that, as fly fishing is starting to gain more attention, I think maybe all levels are starting to want to try and experiment with fly fishing, because in the beginning it just used to be like whether you fly fish or you were an expert, like there was no middle ground. And I think it's nice to see that that's kind of changing. And I think with companies like Trestle, I think it's just more of like creating a welcoming environment for everyone to join in the outdoors.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's important, like I said, there's always like, it's kind of hard to walk that line in a way because, you do get some attitudes where you're like, that's not really, you're not really putting the fishery first with that kind of attitude. And so it's like, how do I welcome those people in? And I think that something I see really done poorly, like on social media or wherever it might be, is instead of like seeing their interest in the activity and then trying to educate a little bit about how maybe just a couple changes would make a big difference in what you're doing, they just kind of condemn. And I think education's the key.
Absolutely. And also, I think if you have more people who are invested in the waters, like want to participate, with love comes like protection. Like you're going to want to protect the things that you love. And so hopefully if we get people who are educated about the water system and like, hey, this is what's going on this year in Montana, this is what's going on in Oregon, steelhead fishing, like we need to have people who speak up. And I think the only way that when you have people who speak up on the waters and conservation is when people are invested in them. And so because somebody who's just playing video games downstairs in their basement is probably never going to be really all that concerned with the steelhead population.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah.
No. Maybe in the metaverse.
Yeah, in the metaverse. Maybe if they're a fly fishing guide. Actually, is there even a game like that? Could you imagine? I'm a fly fishing guide. These are the 3 people. You got to go down the river. So, like, John, what is, I think when you create something, you're hoping that what you're bringing to the table is going to create a better environment or better experience for people who are using it. What was your goal when you're coming up with Trestle?
Well, I think very first it was, I like to call it product first. I saw, so you got to kind of, I guess in a way, hear me out on it, because I think focusing on what I do and Morgan and I and now our whole company do really well is we design products. We design products and we come up with, input from guides or just any consumer really, and then we implement them and try to do things in a very different way. Like for instance, mounting differently to your boat, because I was tired of my box flying all over the place when I go down the river. It's like just little things, and then hearing from a bunch of people at a trade show saying, hey, that's a cool idea, but actually this would be way better. Like when we whitewater guide, this is something that doesn't, we haven't seen, and that'd be really cool. And then we took that and said, yeah, I totally agree. I think we should totally do that. So product first is important because it's what we know. And if you have a really good quality product, I think you'll then have a really good quality company and brand, that people can trust and depend on. And when you have that, then you can really leverage it to make a difference. And I think what we stand for is, I think the best way to say it would be being welcoming. I really liked being welcoming. Something that with the company that happened was, my wife actually told me this. She told me about maybe 3 or 4 years into having Trestle and running the company. And she said, it's funny to watch. Your company kind of is a lot of people that are learning. Like a lot of the anglers that we talk with and that buy our stuff were like excited and kind of learning. And my wife said that's really interesting because that's everybody I fished with, sort of on accident, where I was like I was introducing people. I very rarely, for about 20 years, I didn't really fish with anybody that I grew up fishing with. Like we went on a few trips, but I didn't go out and like beat the pass of the river with another guy who was really just out there to quote, like get it done, like really, pay attention and spend. I was pretty much always going with someone that this was their third time or their first time. And it wasn't on purpose. It's just sort of how it happened, I guess. And I really enjoyed showing them. And I'm not a guide or anything, but, just kind of introducing them and showing them why it's important to care about this and why this is important. So as the company's grown with that outlook, I definitely, we've started really partnering with tons of conservation groups and doing, clean water initiatives, which is really important. I'm actually on a board with Upper Missouri Watershed Alliance, which is a conservation group for the Upper Missouri watershed here in Montana. And we do a ton of work with biologists and trying to understand, noxious weed growth and bank restoration and water temps and insect life. And so, obviously we donate a lot of our proceeds every year to that organization and others like it.
Wow, I love it. You're not only just you're not just walking, how does that go? How does that sing? You're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, I think that's how it goes. I'm not the right guy to ask. I swear I can't talk very well most
gosh,
times.
Justin will look at me sometimes on the podcast, or he'll listen to the podcast and he's like, "What did you just say?" And I was like, "Did you just quote TLC?" Yeah, I did. It's like the only thing I can actually quote correctly is music. But if people are starting to look at their gear, and especially I think as I try and expand into fly fishing, I actually really enjoy going into these small creeks and go on a mountain bike ride. I think a lot of people are trying to expand other than just the big rivers and let's go places that nobody else can really access. You got to use a bike, you can't just grab your car. But if people are wanting to upgrade their gear or maybe get some gear, get outside, what's the best way for them to purchase any of the Trestle items that we have talked about?
Yeah, so we always encourage people to try their local fly shop or bike shop. Start there. We're always growing. We're in a little over 200 locations now, but it sounds like a huge number, but it's not that many across the country. So sometimes you can't find it locally. So if you can't, you certainly can go to Trestle.com and shop there. We have our full catalog available on the website, and you can also visit some other great retailers like backcountry.com, places like that. They have our stuff. So you definitely should be able to find it. And I totally agree with you as far as taking the mountain bike to smaller creeks or, further back. I think it's becoming more and more common, Lauren. I a lot of it has to do with, the Forest Service roads not being accessible by motor vehicle in many states, in many places. They're gated off. So to get farther back there, you sort of need to use a mountain bike.
Well, and when we talk about like how busy, as you probably have noticed, I mean, in the summertime, the waters are getting much, people are coming here. They want to go fly fishing, and as they should. And for me, sometimes that can be less relaxing when I go fishing is when I see too many people on the water. And so getting out on a bike or doing these small creeks and going for a hike brings me more relaxation, and also just not thinking like, oh, should I fish here? Where's that person going to go? Like, you're just kind of you're more focused on your surroundings, and just being more relaxed when you're not having to worry about the people around you.
Yeah, totally. It does sort of change it. I think you're kind of talking about that. If you're riding your bike along it just slows it down a little bit, and you're just sort of paying it more attention. I know that there's been times where I went steelheading and I rode by parts of the river that I usually drove by before it was gated off in that area. And, I found some really nice holding water that I normally just didn't look at because I was so focused on where I was driving.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, John, and also, they should follow on Instagram. You guys.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram.
You create some, Trestle creates some really fun video contents. I love watching all the stuff that you guys put together. I mean, you guys are busy nonstop.
Well, thanks.
Seriously, I love it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we try to put it out there. We really try to kind of show a little bit like behind the scenes. I kind of have this chef model, I guess we'll call it, where it's like I don't need to be quiet about how we make things or even like our manufacturing facility. I try to show videos of us putting stuff together and building things and making things because I want people to kind of see where we come from. We're still a small company, and social media is 100 right now. It's just 100% me on all the platforms. I don't have anybody that's really, obviously we have some great like film editors that put together real content, but I'm the one posting it.
Oh, I love it. It's also, when you started this business from the ground up, it's almost like your little baby, and you want to show, like when somebody first has a baby and everyone's like the first like year, you're just seeing post and post of baby's first meal. And this is my baby. I'm going to be showing you like, this is what we're doing in the background. And I think it just shows how much passion you have behind it. Cause I can see it, I watch it, and I think it's just really cool watching a business grow from the ground up, and you guys are growing so fast.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, and before we sign off, I'd just love to hear one more fly fishing story from you.
I guess I do have another one. I took somebody fishing who actually, her name's Janelle. She actually does all of our shipping and receiving now here in Helena. But when she was learning to fly fish, I took her out and was showing her this particular stream, and she had kind of a classic dropper type rig, under an indicator because she's maybe her third or fourth time ever going. And I knew that this particular, this is an area where there were bull trout. It was in Idaho, and you could target them. And so I knew they were in there, but she was looking for rainbows, and she had, I believe it was just a little Pat Stone type fly with a really small, kind of like I guess it was like a soft hackle kind of dropped underneath it. But so she's drifting it through this run, and she hooks a fish. All hell breaks loose. It's like a really nice rainbow. She's trying to figure out what to do. She's got way too much line in front of her. You know what I mean? So she's like trying to figure out what to do with that. It's like taking off. It's running away. And she finally gets it on, and I'm trying to help her get the line untangled and stuff. And she finally gets it on the reel, and I'm watching her pull it. And it's my rod that she's using, and it's this 6-weight. I'm going, that is... Unless she foul hooks something, there's no way that rainbow is that big in this river. So I'm going, I think you might have a bull trout. And she's going, what? And, she was all freaking out and trying to get it in. And anyway, she loses it. It breaks. She breaks the line. She's all disappointed. And she goes, well, cast out and see if you can hook it. And I'm going, that's not how it works. It's gone. Like it's upset. It's got sore mouth. You know what I mean? All the classic stuff that you would say if you've been doing something for a while. And I'm like trying to act like I'm not super bummed because I was really excited for her, And anyway, so she like literally is so amped on doing it, which is one of the fun things about going with people that are new, and just so excited. I go, fine. If nothing else, just to make you shut up about it, I will cast out and swing through this run. Literally first cast, I hook a fish. And I'm like, well, that's crazy, right? Like, I didn't think I'd hook anything. And I end up bringing in, it's a beautiful bull, really nice fish. Bring it in. I'm going, well, that's not the same one, right? Because I'm thinking this has got to be way bigger than what you had. So anyway, I bring it in. I'm so excited. We're trying to get a photo of it. It's in the net, and I go to take my fly out, and there is her fly in its mouth.
No way.
Yeah, I swear to God, she would second it. I know, I wouldn't believe it either.
So then you pulled her fly out too and gave it back to her, and then pulls yours out?
Yep. So I had the Pat Stone and the soft tackle were both on there. Took that out, took mine out, and let it go.
What are the chances? I mean, that is...
It's super weird.
So weird. Because, I mean, that bull trout, maybe he thought like, oh, she won't try again. Maybe that's...
Yeah, it's got it.
She's not that
I don't know what he was
crazy.
thinking. Apparently, he was very bitey that day. I don't know.
Man, that is a great story. And I can't thank you enough for joining me on the podcast, John. And I can't wait to keep following the journey of Trestle, because I just know you guys are doing great things, and there's only going to be more than wonderful things coming in your future.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.